Hey there guys, Buddy here. So in terms of economic geography, we will be starting with the structure of the economy. Now this is just going to give you a basic introduction to economic geography, and this video is going to discuss the four main sectors of our economy. And I will provide you with some definitions. We will also look at the contributions of each sector to the economy and employment. So there are four main economic sectors. So your primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary sector. So what is the primary sector? The primary sector involves the extraction or harvesting of natural resources directly from the earth. These are raw materials used for food, energy or production. Remember, this sector is all about removing your natural resources from the environment. So activities will include agriculture. An example of agriculture will be maize farming in the Free State. The next activity will be fishing, and examples will be small-scale fishing along the Western Cape coast. Another major activity will be mining. Example will be gold in Gauteng, coal in Mpumalanga, and platinum in the northwest. Now what we need to remember is that South Africa has a very rich mining history, right? We were once the world's leading gold producer. And I think we reached our peak in like the 1970s, and we were only overtaken by China in 2007, I believe. Now the activities that take place within the primary sector are going to be labor intensive. Think about farming, think about mining. Those are very labor intensive activities, right? And these are often going to be your rural based activities. You're not going to find farming and mining taking place in an urban area. And again, these activities are going to be vulnerable to your environmental changes. So think about droughts, think about flooding. That can all affect our agriculture. So what is the secondary sector? The secondary sector involves the processing or manufacturing of raw materials into finished or semi-finished goods. Now, if you remember, the primary sector was all about extracting and removing these raw materials. Now, the secondary sector is going to take it one step up. They're now going to take these raw materials and they are going to process or manufacture it into finished or semi-finished goods. Examples will be food processing. Think of fruit canning in Paarl. Another example will be manufacturing. Think about the BMW car plant in Rosslyn, Pretoria. Think about construction, right? Building homes, roads and bridges. And another example will be your textile or clothing production. Think about how many clothing factories Durban has. And all these activities are just going to add value to these raw materials, right? And it's going to be often located in urban areas or in industrial zones. Now, one thing to remember is that manufacturing is going to contribute significantly to South Africa's GDP. Don't worry what that is, we will come to that definition soon. So what is the tertiary sector? The tertiary sector involves providing services rather than goods. These services support both the primary and secondary sectors and directly serve the public. So think about your community. If you can think of a service that's being offered, most likely that service is going to be part of the tertiary sector. So think of transport, right? Think of taxis, think of buses. Think about healthcare, your doctors, your hospitals, your nurses. Think about education. Think about teachers and tutors. Also banking, retail, tourism and law. All of these activities will fall under the tertiary sector. Now remember, these are all service-based activities. That means that they're going to require skills and education, and they're usually going to be concentrated in your urban areas. So what is the quaternary sector? The quaternary sector is a high-tech sector based on knowledge, information and high-level services. It includes research, education and information technology and other knowledge-based services. Now examples will be your ICT companies, so think of MTN and Vodacom. Remember, research institutions, universities and private education services all will fall under your quaternary sector. Even consulting firms, your legal and your financial analysis. Now we need to understand that in order to provide these services, high-skilled labor is going to be required. And again, it's mostly going to be your urban-based services. So please take a screenshot of the table that's going to be displayed on your screen, as this gives you a very nice breakdown of each sector, what it does, and examples. So your primary sector is going to extract raw materials, and examples will be mining in Rustenburg and maize farming. Your secondary sector is going to manufacture or process goods, and examples will be car plants in Rosslyn and your food factories. Your tertiary sector involves providing services, and examples would be tourism in Cape Town and banking in Joburg. And our Quaternary sector provides knowledge and information-based services, and examples will be universities and ICT in Gauteng. Now, let's take a look at some definitions that you will need to know throughout the economic geography chapter. The first definition will be the gross domestic product, often referred to as GDP. So the GDP is the total value of all goods and services produced within the borders of a country in 1 year. Now remember, this is the measure of a country's overall economic activity, right? And it's going to include both the local and your foreign companies that are going to be operating within the country. So let's take an example, right? Now if BMW builds and sells cars in South Africa, right, that production is going to be included in South Africa's GDP despite the car company being German. The next definition will be the gross geographic product, also known as the GGP. Now, the GGP is the total value of goods and services produced within a specific province or geographic region in 1 year. Now, this is going to be very similar to the GDP. However, it's only going to focus on a single province, not the entire country, right? The gross geographic product is basically going to help us compare the economic performance between regions. For example, let's say Gauteng versus Limpopo. Now, let's say Gauteng produces more services and goods than any other province in South Africa. That means that Gauteng will have the highest GGP in the country. And our third definition will be the gross national product, so your GNP. The GNP is the total value of all goods and services produced by the citizens and businesses of a country, no matter where in the world they are located. Now, this is going to include the income that is earned by South Africans abroad. Now, let's say someone from South Africa is working in the US, right? Their income is going to be included into our GNP because at the end of the day, they are South Africans. Now, your GNP is going to exclude any income that is going to be earned by foreigners within South Africa. So let's take an example, right? If a South African mining company is going to earn money in Zambia, right? That income is going to be part of South Africa's GNP, but not its GDP because it's outside of South Africa. I hope that doesn't sound too confusing. But anyway. So now we need to understand that South Africa is going to be an LEDC, right? They're going to be a less economically developed country. So we are going to face many challenges. Some of those challenges include poverty, right? That's when people do not have enough money to meet basic needs like food, housing, and education. Another challenge will be unemployment, right? That's when people who are willing to work, they cannot find any jobs. Now, when thinking about poverty, we also need to think about the widening wealth gap, right? That's going to be the growing difference in income and wealth between rich and poor people. Now, a crazy stat is that South Africa has one of the highest inequality rates anywhere in the world. Another challenge will be the HIV and AIDS pandemic. That's going to be a major health crisis that's going to affect the working age population. And we need to think about one of South Africa's biggest challenges, which is crime and corruption. And remember, with high crime rates, that's going to discourage any investment in tourism, which means we're not going to be making money. And that's going to further lead to unemployment. We haven't even spoken about load shedding and our electricity crisis. So here's a quick table for you to take a screenshot of, and you can refer to it later when you're doing your own self-study. This is just going to provide you with the challenges we face in South Africa and the effect on the economy, as well as its geographic link. Now let's take a look at the following stats. Now these stats are going to be from the year 2023, and obviously each year it is going to change. Now don't stress, because in your exam paper, they will provide you with the stats for the specific year that they will base your questions off of. So in terms of 2023, your primary sector contributed to 2.6% of the GDP. Your secondary sector contributed 24.6% of the GDP, whereas your tertiary sector contributed 62.6% of your GDP. Now in terms of employment, your primary sector, it contributed 18.8% of employment. Your secondary sector contributed 17.7% of employment, and your tertiary sector contributed to 63.5% of employment. Now let's interpret this data and see what it's actually trying to tell us. Now, in terms of our primary sector, employment is going to be high at 18.8%, but its contribution to the GDP is going to be very low at about 2.6%. Now, that tells us a lot, right? Now, many people in South Africa, especially in your rural areas, they're going to be working in farming and fishing. Now, remember, these jobs are not going to add much money to the economy, either because it's going to be subsistence farming or low-paying work. Remember, subsistence farming is farming that's just for the farmer and his own family, right? He's not going to be selling those goods that he's going to be farming. In terms of our secondary sector, it's going to make up a good portion of our GDP, right? So that's going to be 24.6%. But it's only going to consist of 17.7% of jobs. Now that means that industries like mining and factories, they're going to produce a lot of value for our GDP. But they don't need as many workers because think of it, your mines and your factories are all going to have machinery and automation taking place. Therefore, you do not need many people working there. That's why the sector only has 17.7% of jobs. Now, when we're taking a look at our tertiary sector, we can see that it has a massive GDP contribution of 62.6%, and it's going to take up majority of the jobs at 63.5%. Now, this tells us that most South Africans are going to work in service jobs. Think about teaching, think about retail, tourism, banking. And all of these jobs are going to add the most to our country's income, right? So here's a quick summary. Even though the primary sector is going to employ many people, it doesn't make much money for the country, right? The tertiary sector makes the most money and it provides the most jobs, showing how South Africa is a modern urbanizing economy. And that's it for the introduction to economic geography. I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, please give the video a like and please subscribe for more. In the next video, I should touch on the primary sector in detail. So we're going to look at agriculture, food security, as well as mining. Also, if you have any questions or concerns, please leave it in the comment section. I always read and reply to every single comment. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you for being here. Remember, stay cool, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.